Today we talk about data, a lot of data. Hello everybody, welcome back to InsideTheHive.tv live streams. It's always glad to have you guys here. Let me know in the chat room if you guys are able to see me, to hear me well. I can see that Randy Clinton already saying, Casey, thank you. So everything is working fine. I'm very excited today because it's the first time that we're going to talk about data in beekeeping and what we can do with data in the beekeeping industry. And to talk about that, I very likely the best person on the market to talk about data in the beekeeping industry. Let me bring Dr. NATHALIE STEINHAUER here with us. NATHALIE, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Umberto, for having me.
It's very good to have you here. Let me talk a little bit about what you do. NATHALIE is part of the Bee Informed Partnership. If you guys don't know what Bee Informed Partnership is, you really need to check the work they're doing. NATHALIE is the science coordinator and BIP. Am I correct, NATHALIE? So tell me, what do you do there? So you're a postdoc there, you deal with a lot of data. That's what I know. Tell me a little bit what you work and what you do there.
Sure, obviously. I am a postdoctoral student at University of Maryland. I work in the University of Maryland Bee Lab. But my primary occupation day-to-day is to be the science coordinator for the Bee Informed Partnership. So that is a nonprofit organization, which is not entirely based at University of Maryland, but we do have a very strong core team that are employed there. And we do work with other universities, other bee labs throughout the country. We do have a pretty extensive and remote teams throughout the country. And what we do is we collect data on honeybee health, and we are trying to do good science and trying to be the link between the scientists and the industry, and do good science in the field and bring that data back to the scientists, back to the beekeepers, so that they can take informed decision.
Yeah, I am a user of your data set. You guys provide so very nice, clean ways to use the data for us to educate ourselves. But I know how hard it is to collect that data with the surveys. Sometimes people don't like to participate on those surveys. Guilt on that too. When I saw those big questionnaires, I was just like, oh my God. But
we've tried to do better.
I know how important it is, so that's why I do. So my main message here and goal is to try to let people understand a little bit more how important it is to take the time and do the work to provide that data, so we can use that data and it's available to everybody later, and how we can work with that. NATHALIE, do you have a presentation so you can give us a little overview about what's going on with BIP?
That sounds good. No, you asked me to prepare a 10-15 minutes presentation, so that's what I did. And then please interrupt me at any time if there is questions or if you want me to dig deeper on a specific topic.
I will be collecting reading the message from the people at home right now, and when we're done, we're gonna go one by one. So guys,
that sounds great.
If you have questions, just write in the chat room and I will be collecting them. Okay, NATHALIE.
Okay,
the world is yours.
Oh, that's scary. So yeah, I wanted to talk about citizen science at the Bee Informed Partnership, because a lot of the project that we do, we wouldn't be able to do it without the citizen scientists that help us collect this data. And so yeah, if you want to go on the beeinformed.org website, this is where we have information about all of our services. And let me see if I can progress my slides. PowerPoint is struggling. Oh no, PowerPoint is not responding. Just give that there we go.
Here we go.
All right. So as I was mentioning, our mission as a nonprofit organization is to improve colony health, and so that's really the core mission of our organization. And we do that through different programs, but the idea behind all of them is always to support beekeepers to take good management decision in their operation. And we really like to show ourselves as the bridge between the science and industry. We facilitate a lot of research happening in the field with beekeepers as part of we do a lot of research in, I was going to say official, but in real beekeeping operation with real beekeepers, so that the objective is to always have research that is applicable in the field and that is really meaningful for the beekeepers. Now, we have been doing those projects for a number of years now. And so while doing all of that, we have become the largest US repository for colony health data. And so that is entirely due to the longevity of those programs and the fact that we're working with beekeepers year after year. And so some of those programs, they all rely on the same model. So we like to say that we are following the public health model, which is what has been developed for human epidemiology. So when you have epidemiologists that look at human health, they're applying this model, and we are trying to replicate it for honeybees as well. So the first step is always that in order to work on an issue, you need to define and you need to monitor it, right? So we need to know what we are talking about. So for example, in the loss survey that we're going to talk in a minute, we're talking about the turnover of colonies, right? The replacement rates of colonies year after year. So we need to define that issue, and then we need to monitor it, which is why it's important to do the same survey again and again, year after year. And it sounds a lot repetitive, but this is really important to be able to decide what is a normal level of the issue and what then is abnormal. And from them, we really try to identify then what are the factors that are associated with this phenomenon, both the risk factors that increase the problem, but also the protective factors that can reduce it. And then when we have those factors identified, that's when you can really start to develop prevention strategies or rectifying strategies that can rectify the problem. So it's prevention or rectification of the problem. And then you can test it in the field. And if it's work in the field, then that's when you want to promote it as widely as you can. So this is the model that we're trying to implement in all of our programs as well. Oh, I think I skipped the slide. So I wanted to go back, if I can, to the list. There we go. This is the slide that I was searching for. So those are the different programs that we are proposing that we're working on and the Bee Informed Partnership. And so I'm not going to talk about all of them today. I'm going to focus on the Loss and Management Survey because that is one of our oldest running programs, and it's also the one that is currently running all the months of April, and that we want to encourage as many beekeepers as possible to participate. It's free, it's online, it's basically a questionnaire that you can take in 20 to 30 minutes of your time and contribute to science and by providing the answers about what is happening, what has happened in your colonies, in your operation last year. But some of those other programs, I really encourage you to go online and search for them. We are working with all the variety in the beekeeping industry, from small-scale beekeepers. We are working with clubs, we're working with other organizations, and then we're working all the way to commercial beekeepers as well. So different of our programs are really trying to target those different sides of the beekeeping industry so that everybody can participate at their own level. And some of our programs are a fee for service, and some of our programs are free. So it really depends on what you can do. The Loss and Management Survey is one of those programs that is free. It was started as a grant, and now we are continuing the program even though it's unfunded, just because we think it's really important to continue to keep a pulse on the loss rates in the country. So this Loss and Management Survey that I was just telling you about, here's a little bit of the history behind it. So the first survey was actually launched in 2007. So for those of you that kept bees at the time, that date might trigger some memories. So that was really in the wake of colony collapse disorder, and that actually triggered some interest and some questions, right? And the primary question was, okay, well, we see those very high level of losses that are unusual according to what the beekeepers tell us, but what is a usual, what is a normal mortality rate of colony? What is the normal turnover rates of colonies in a year? And really, we didn't have a good answer to that at the time. We have other surveys that focus on the number of colonies in the population in the country, like the NAS survey is a survey on that's called the Honey Report, that's produced every year, where they document the total number of honeybee colonies in the country every year. But that doesn't tell us that just tells us population size. It does not tell us about the mortality rate. And so that survey here, the loss and management survey, really filled that niche, that question that we didn't have an answer for at the time, which is trying to estimate that turnover rate, that replacement rate of colonies. So at the time, it was launched by the Apiary Inspectors of America. And then a few years later, that actually was written into this very first NIFAC grant that funded the Bee Informed Partnership. And so a couple of years later, the Bee Informed Partnership took over the administration of the survey, and we've been doing it ever since, even after the NIFA grant finished, and BIP was officially transformed into a non-profit organization to try to sustain itself and continue its mission. So in the most recent years, we have started to work more and more with Auburn University, with Dr. Jeff Williams and a couple of his staff, so Dr. Selina Buckner and Dan Orell are also working with us. And when I say us, it's we're also at the Bee Informed Partnership. I'm not the only one working on this project, obviously, and I would like to how do you call that?
Acknowledge
the work of Michaela Wilson, which is also the foreign result with this whole program would not be happening. So
I remember how many guys, when I was there working at University of Maryland with you guys before, there was an army of people.
I don't know that we're an army. I think we're a mighty but small army, probably.
Things are a small army now. So yeah, so shout out to everybody at the BIP. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. So yeah, we're very proud of this survey because it is a fully voluntary survey. As I was saying, this is free for beekeepers to participate. Obviously, it's a questionnaire online, but it also means that we are relying on beekeepers to volunteer their time to take the survey. And despite this being just fully volunteer, every year on average, we have about 10% of the US beekeepers take our survey, and that's an average. It depends from year to year. And so, and usually represents between 10 and 12% of the US colony. So if you imagine 1 in 10 colonies in the country is represented in this voluntary survey, which is amazing. And so we're really thankful of all the beekeepers that take the time to answer our survey. And every year we have to start this request again, and we have to start to ask beekeepers to take the survey yet again, because it's really important to do this project in the long term and to do it again year after year, to be able to really monitor what's happening. So I wanted to share with you some results to see what are the information that this data gives us. So the first and obvious one, obviously, as we said, we want to estimate the mortality rate of colonies. So this is the national level rates of mortality of colonies. So this is the average across all beekeepers in the country. Of what is the risk for any given colony, right? What is the percentage of mortality of a given colony in the US year after year? And so on this graph, what you see is on the horizontal axis, you see every year of the survey from 2008 to last year, 2021. We're showing you in the different colors. In gray is what we call the winter acceptable loss. So this is what beekeepers tell us they consider would be an acceptable level of mortality. And then in blue and in red, you have the level of actual mortality estimated for the winter season, which we actually call winter anytime between October and April, because we divide the year in those 2 6-month periods, October to April and April to October. And then in annual is April to April, 1 full calendar year. And so what we have seen over the years is that those levels of mortality are pretty high, and they're definitely higher than what the beekeepers tell us they find acceptable. So in blue, because we started by just looking over the winter, because you learn beekeeping and you learn that winter is the period of time that is the most dangerous for colonies, right? That's when colonies die. So we started by asking those questions just about that winter period. And then for a few years, we're like, well, what about the rest of the year? And then we realized, oh, it's actually not trivial. Beekeepers do lose colonies in the summer as well. And then we can go into a little more details in a minute. But what is really interesting is the different type of operation will have different level of risk, more or less in the winter or more or less in the summer. So that's when we can go into a little more details if I have those slides. But so still on average over the more than 10.
Before you move, just
Yes.
come up with questions. I think it might be better if we just try to do it right now.
Sure.
Is there an acceptable annual rate, or is it a bundle of acceptable winter losses? Your thoughts on that?
That's a great question, Thomas. So originally we asked that acceptable question when we only had the question on the winter. So we've continued of asking over just the winter, and we've not asked what is the acceptable loss on the annual season, just for continuing the sake of asking that question over the winter. So that is something that we haven't asked. So good catch.
All right, thank you, Thomas.
So here is the result. So like usually in the 10+ year of the survey, the average winter loss is always hovering around 30%. So basically that means that on your average winter, in the last 10+ years, one colony had one in 3 chance of surviving the winter, right? 30% of colonies will die. Sorry, 100% of not making it past the winter. And then the annual loss is a little higher at 40%. So that means that 4 out of 10 colonies will need to be replaced at one point during the year on average. And of course, averages hide a lot of variation. So this is the risk at the national level, but if you try to dig deeper and then you look by beekeepers, you see a lot of variation here, right? So some beekeepers are doing very well and they're not losing a lot of colonies, but then other beekeepers, they're losing 70 to 80% of their operation. So there is a lot of variation behind this one average. So the one way to start looking at this variation is to look at the state level of loss instead of the national. And so this is where you can start to see where more and more of that variation. And so we have those maps available for all the states in which we have more than I think the cutoff that we're not printing anything with less than, I think, 10 respondents. We have a limit so that we don't want to divulge, when we start to go into lower number of respondents, it's less reliable, one thing. And then second, we don't want to share private data. And so we always show aggregate data of everything.
So what's the threshold?
I think it's 10. I think it's actually written on the website.
Okay.
You can go on this website, research.informed.loss map. And you can see, for your state, you can look at the season of interest and the year of interest, and all of those data are available online. But again, so we see a lot of variation from state to state. There is actually a couple of students that are working right now on trying to see if we can see some geographical pattern and starting to look at maybe weather impact. Because I mean, just one general rule that we've seen year after year is that states that are more north tend to have higher mortality than states from more of the south part of the United States, at least for winter loss. So this is something that we've observed just generally, and we have now some GIS geology students that are working into trying to quantify that for us. All right. Another just way of showing, the diversity in our respondents. This is actually a graph that I made to look at what is the distribution of the expertise, if you want, the number of years of beekeeping for our respondents by grouping them in those three categories of beekeepers that we like to work with, which is what we qualify a backyard, sideliner, and commercial. That's actually based on the number of colonies that a beekeeper manage. On October 1st is our definition. So if you have less than 50 colonies, you're classified as a backyard beekeepers. Between 50 and 500, you're a sideliner, and above 500 colonies, all the way to the 10,000s of colonies and more, you're a commercial beekeepers. And so here we can see how backyard beekeepers, a lot of them are actually beginner beekeepers as well, right? So we have our median, which is the 50% mark of the population on the left side on this yellow bar graphs, where the median for backyard beekeeper is 5 years. So that means that 50% of backyard beekeeper have less than 5 years of experience. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you see that commercial beekeepers, a lot of them are way more experienced. And so the median here is 35 years. So that means that 50%, so half commercial beekeepers, have more than 37 years of experience. So this just the variation of level of beekeeping and practice, the size of the operation are very, very different. The experience is very different. And we're trying to really do a survey that addresses all of those differences, and which is why, when we do the survey, one of the first questions you're asked is do you have more or less than 50 colonies? And that's because the follow-up questions, we've actually tried to make them so that they're more relevant to your level of beekeeping as well. So we do ask some question of commercial beekeepers that we do not ask of the general backyard beekeepers, right? So for example, commercial beekeepers, we ask them about their staff. That is not question that we're sending to the backyard beekeepers. So we really try to address those needs differently. All right, so another very interesting response from the survey that we show every year is the self-reported causes of loss. So this is a graph that a lot of people are interested in year after year, because though it doesn't really show what are the causes for mortality, it shows us what is the perception of the beekeepers about those causes of mortality, right? So this is the beekeepers tell us what they think was responsible for losses in their operation. So obviously in beekeeping, we don't really have a very convenient cause of death certificate going with every colony mortality. But if we ask beekeepers what they think is the reason, at least we get an idea of what the beekeepers, the perception of the problems, right? So, or how little or big they think a problem is. And that is already giving us some indication. And so in 2021, for example, in the last winter, we noticed that all three types of operation, backyard and sideliner, their first, the most important cause of loss that they reported was Varroa. And this is actually something that we observed has changed over the years. So if you looked at this graph for 5 years ago, Varroa was not so highly represented in backyard beekeepers. So we really see a shift where more and more we see that backyard beekeepers are getting more aware of the problem that Varroa really represents. And so they're catching up to realizing that this is one of the biggest issues in beekeeping. So that's very encouraging. And then for all, those three types of operation, queen issues is highly cited. But for commercial beekeepers in particular, they cite queen issue are nearly as much as they cite Varroa. And so those are interesting questions that just try to point us to where beekeepers think the problem resides. And I think that really needs to then show us where to focus scientific questions afterwards as well. So I think I wanted to show you one more set of figures from the survey. That is something that I've actually presented at the Apicultural Research Conference in January, because those were very interesting results. We were quite fascinated when we were putting those graphs together. So over the years of asking the same questions, at some point when we put all of that together, we really are able to see the shifts in management practices, right? We can see those adoption curves of people like doing more and more of one practices. and forgetting others, right? So this is a figure that shows you the change in practices following Varroa treatment use. So, 10 years ago, if you had asked the majority of the beekeepers in the country if they were using a Varroa treatment in their operation, so here in 2021, 2011, 2012, you would see that the majority of beekeepers did not use a Varroa treatment in their operation, right? Close to 60% of beekeepers did not use Varroa treatment at that time. And you can see how that fraction has reduced year after year, and the fraction of beekeepers that actually use a Varroa treatment in their operation has increased in reverse. So we can see those changes of practices over time, which is really fascinating. And then if we want to go into a little more detail, we can ask which beekeepers are doing more of those new practices. And so this shows you kind of the same data, except here I'm combining monitoring and treatment. And I'm looking at that information for all the three types of beekeepers: backyard, sideliner, and commercial. And then, of course, you know, Umberto, why I'm putting together monitoring and treatment, right? Because
Yes.
as a good extension person, you know that the recommended practice is that you should monitor for Varroa and then treat in response to that monitoring. And then you should monitor again to see if your treatment was effective. So monitoring and treatment should really go hand in hand in your management.
Yeah, I cannot stress that enough. People at home, and when I consult with beekeepers, is probably one of the main problems I found with different treatments, because there are different treatments and different ways to use it. There's detail matters, but one thing that beekeepers don't follow up is after the treatment, they need to find out if it works or not. And it's the only way to find out if it works or not. If you need to go there and monitor and do the test and collect bees.
Right.
I know it's a pain in the butt, but it's very important. Otherwise, you might be losing your money doing something that is not working, and
Yes.
we don't want that in your operation, bleeding and with
And even a
labor.
treatment, right?
Yeah, and the labor.
Even a treat. Sorry, I interrupted.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that sometimes even a treatment that is effective in the ideal condition, there might be reason why it didn't work this time, right? Maybe the temperature wasn't right. Maybe, you know, your colony wasn't squared completely and the product evaporated. So there are reasons why even an effective treatment cannot be effective in your particular circumstances. So you should always check before and after to be able to see if you see that reduction that you're expecting.
Yeah, people here at the Inside the Hive.tv, I always talk about those variations, local variations. Beekeeping is local. We need to adapt for your operation. So they are very aware of these problems, but we are gonna keep pushing this button until I die.
Well, and here you can see maybe some of the results from your efforts of sharing those information over the years, because like if you look at the backyard beekeepers on the left side of this graph, you can see again that 10 years ago, 2011,
Yeah.
the majority of them were not monitoring and not treating, which is represented in yellow. And this fraction has really dropped over the time. And then what really gave me a smile when I saw that figure is that the color that you like, right, the monitor and treat, which is in dark blue, is the one that has risen over the years. So backyard beekeepers have heard us, are hearing that message, and they're adapting, and they're, you know, performing those best recommended practice in their operation more and more. So we're still over a little less than 75%, right? So it's still not, it's like, you know, a little less than 3%.
Well, it's a big shift, you know. Before you have people didn't want to, and there is a lot. I like to talk this a lot. You know, there is a lot of ways to do beekeeping. Yes, there are certain occasions that you can go with your beekeeping operation without treatment. Yes, but you need to need to be a very set of location and no neighbors around, and you know, it's very rare to find those. That environment for you to get there. Normally you have people around you, and that's when the things start to become complicated.
Yeah, that is true, because bee health is really shared health in the landscape. You're sharing your bees and their diseases with your neighbors and all the other beekeepers in your area, unfortunately. So So just wanted to shout out a little bit to commercial beekeepers that even 10 years ago, they were already the ones ahead of the curve of these pest management practices. And they have still improved over time, but they were already doing quite well. So we still see that in those 10 years, we still see the progress that they've made, but I just wanted to.
Oh yeah, it's encouraging numbers to see this shift of mentality. It's
Right.
interesting. Yeah, interesting.
And so I'm actually very happy that you said beekeeping is local, because that's really the greatest segue that I could ask for promoting this year's survey. Because so let me back up a little bit. 2 years ago, when we started working with Auburn more and more, and we decided to make a radical change in the way that we do the survey. And that's really a response to beekeepers that have been taking the survey for so long. That they told us the survey is too long, the survey is too complicated. But the problem is we were really interested in all of the questions in the survey, right? We want to ask nutrition and treatment and environment and queen and everything.
I'll be very happy with that. That'll make my life much easier. Instead of me researching for a beekeeper all those components and put the plan together, I just go to your website and get the information there. Oh, then you're gonna retire me. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
So here was our solution. We decided to always ask the same set of questions that we needed to calculate loss, because that's always the core mission of the program. And then a couple of questions that are just very high level about, did you treat, yes or no? Did you monitor, yes or no? Just very high level without too much details. And those questions will be in every survey from now on to the future, that continuing that tradition that we started 10 years ago. But then every year we're going to focus on one, special topic. So a focus topic, if you want, where
we
dig deeper into this particular question every year. And those topics will come back in a rotation, maybe 4 years from now or something. So last year we asked a lot of questions about queens and new colonies. And Dan Orell, the students from Auburn University, is working on trying to publish those results soon. That's unfortunately the pace of
I know the drill.
But this year we are focusing on nutrition and environment. So we're digging a little deeper into questions about nectar flows and pollen flows and pollination events, but also feeding practices, weather events, maybe pesticide risk associated with your beekeeping. And so that would be the special focus of this year. And as you said, beekeeping is local, so we really are trying to get beekeepers from across the United States to tell us about those specific topics in your area, in your operation, to try to get a big pictures of everything.
Yeah, that's quite fascinating to me, and I'm so glad you guys are going to that direction, because that's gonna tell us a lot. There's gonna be a lot to think about. If you can go even local, the state levels. I don't know how much data and people you need to do that. But when people start to realize how powerful these kind of data are for the beekeeping operation, I think we can convince more and more people to join and start to release some information.
That's really what we need, because the more respondent we have, basically the lower level we can dig, right? Because if you have a little bit of respondent, then you cannot do regional summaries, because then you would get into too low representation and not enough beekeepers to be representative. So we do need a lot of beekeepers to take the survey, and the survey is live right now. So if you go to the beeinformed.org, you will see on the front page, it will tell you the survey is live, take the survey here, goes through a page where we explain who we all are and what the survey objectives are. And at the bottom of that page, you can take the survey. And yeah, it's online. You can print the PDF of the questions ahead of time if you want. So there is 2 PDFs available on the website, so you can have a look at those questions before you take the survey online. And yeah, it's open until the end of the month. So it's open during the whole month of April.
So that's nice. So guys,
sometime.
if you understand the power of data, and so that's a good opportunity for you to contribute and help this organization that's trying to really make something really nice and providing those data for us. So yeah, if you can, please fill up those forms. I know it's annoying. I hate them myself, but I do it because we have to. Oh, just one
Thank you.
second. James, thank you very much for the super sticker. I appreciate it very much. All right. Nathalie, what else?
Well, that's the end of my presentation, but
Okay.
if you have questions for me, or if you wanted to maybe take your survey right now in front of everyone, you could do that too.
We can do that. Oh, that's, yeah, let's try that. Wait a second. Let me get the survey again. Okay, let me share my screen now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's see what this survey is all about.
Right, so this is the main page on the
So, okay,
beeinformed.org.
so you go to beeinformed.org, take the survey, /take the survey, okay. Then we go below.
You have some information about, the everything surrounding, how we protect your data, what we do with the data, what are the objectives of the survey. We just want to have it all laid out here for everybody to know what's.
Yeah, so all the legal stuff, I would say.
Yes, and then the blue link right there will take you to the platform that our IT team built for us to take the survey.
Okay, so what I'm supposed to do here first? Okay, I'm gonna tell where I am, but this is a test, so I'm gonna put test here because I don't want to.
You don't want to mess up my data.
Mess up your
I
data.
appreciate that.
Okay, so test.
The first thing you see, that the first question you have to look at is which operation type you are, right? So if you are a large scale beekeeper, so that will determine your version that you're going to see afterwards. So you have to answer if you're lower than 50 colonies or higher than 50 colonies on October 1st.
Is the survey only to the US or Canada too?
It's actually, the objective is just the US. We do have some people that take the survey from Canada, but unfortunately we do not present the results because we are trying to get an estimate for US.
So then you put here maybe where you are in the world if they want to take it and give you data.
Yeah, but unfortunately there's not much that we do with that data right now.
Yeah.
And I want to say that if you're in Canada and you want to take a survey, they have a survey in Canada as well. So
okay,
I don't want to take away from there.
I will put here 51 or more.
Okay, we're doing the commercial version then. That sounds good.
Okay, and test Humberto. Here we go.
Okay, well, maybe select Maryland because I think you have to still select this.
Okay, here we go. What's going on here?
All right, so this explains to you the time period that the survey covers. And so this is one of the differences that we have between the backyard version and the commercial version. So this is actually, again, when we created the survey, we worked with commercial beekeepers so that they, what they liked and didn't like about the survey. And one of the things they didn't like was that that starting date of April 1st. A lot of them would say, well, that's in the middle of my splits. And so I'm not sure of how many colonies I have right now because I'm literally in the middle of splitting 250 colonies or more. So
yeah,
what this actually tells us, it will ask you when you do your splits in the spring. And then for commercial beekeepers, that will actually dictate when the start of the summer season is for you. So if you're backyard beekeepers, you don't have to worry about that. It's going to directly do April 1st. But if you're a commercial beekeepers, which is the version you selected, you can say when you did your first splits and you select the date, and that will then be the start of the summer season for that year.
Okay, pick a date. Today.
March 15. Well, today would already be later, right?
Yep.
Survey ended at April 4th. Because the survey is basically from April to April. So anything happening now is going to be for next year's survey already.
So how many colonies did you own at each time?
Right.
A
So
hundred
before you
thousand.
split. Okay.
That will be too much in my account. That's what I think is ideal.
So you're answering for your ideal beekeeper right now. Is that what you're doing?
Well, yeah, yeah, so many different ways to do. If you go after that, there is in my view, there is a little extra cost on people and machines that we might need to do. So that's the number I like to work with beekeepers to maximize profit. And unfortunately, I need to go that direction with my thinking sometimes. Okay.
Right. So you have to do that starting date that you gave, and then October, and then the when you started your split this year. So those are the 3 dates that we need. And so when we have the number of colonies that you have at those 3 points, we use those to calculate.
Start of the summer. This start of the summer before. Okay. That can vary. I will go with double.
The screen is a little small for me, so you have, if you need help on a question, you have to read it because I'm not able to
Oh, you
read.
can't read it? So yeah, there is a lot to consider here. I don't know if is a good. I
Well,
would
you can
spend a lot of my time.
let's take this page, and then we can just look at the question, and you can just enter one in all of the cases.
Can I save and continue so we can show the
Yes.
whole thing? Okay, so let's do
Yeah.
that because I want to.
So
Maybe.
the other thing is that you need to enter something. So I just wanted to go through those pages real fast. So as you said, the first line is just asking you the number of colonies that you have
Okay.
at those different dates. Then we ask you if you know the size of them. Know that not all of the questions are mandatory. So there are questions that if you don't know the answers, you can skip. But some questions are mandatory. Like for us, those 3 dates are very key, and we need to know. So that's why those 3 questions are mandatory here, because we need to know the number of colonies that you own to be able to calculate the loss rates, right?
Okay.
If you just put a 1 in all of the cells right now, so that I can show you the next page of question.
All right. So what's going on here? So what the percentage of loss over the last winter? So we're going to put average of 30%, 40%.
That's the percentage that you consider acceptable.
Acceptable. 0. That's my acceptable.
All right. You put 0% on the right side there.
0. That's the only I accept.
The next 2 questions is the cause of loss. So that's the one I showed you the figure for. And so this is where the data come from, right? So we ask beekeepers, what do you think were the major causes of loss in your operation over the winter and over the summer? So you can pick 2 different things there.
Bears. Yeah.
We do have random attacks, yeah, like bears or floods or all those type of accidental things might be a cause of loss.
Yeah. Queen issues. Varroa might.
So you see that some questions are single choice, so some questions are multiple choice. So yeah.
So you can put out as many choices you want here.
In this one, it might be limited to 3. I think it's limited to the top 3 in this particular question.
Okay, so let me see.
You don't have to pick 3 if you don't want to. You can just
Adverse weather. Okay.
All right.
What factors do you think were the most prominent causes of colony death in your operation on winter 21-22?
Yeah, so you see the first was summer, and then the same question for winter, so that you can give for the 2 specific seasons.
Interesting. So if you have your operation and you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to know these questions very well.
But one of the option is I don't know, because some
I
people
don't know.
don't know the cause of loss in their operations. So that is a fine answer as well. Don't feel like you have to pick something.
Oh, if I want to guess, it's gonna be my guess 100% of the time.
All right, so just wanted to give you a couple of, and maybe we can stop after the last survey, but you can see that the next couple of questions are going to be about locations. So we ask, a main zip code, and that is mostly because when we're trying to compare our data with other surveys, such as the NAS data, because this is a way of validating our response, right? So if we do have a zip code that associated the OBs, then we can compare that with the data that we get from the data from USDA, and that will, if we are overrepresenting some areas or underrepresenting some other areas. So that is a way for us to try to test the representativeness of our response.
I see. So how I move forward from here? I need to answer.
If you want, you can just, there might be one question that's mandatory. I'm sorry, it's too small for me to say, but otherwise, yeah, the last question here, you have to answer no or yes. So there,
how many colonies on average share the same location apiary? Oh, this is interesting. That's an important question. Yeah, I see why.
We're trying to get to the idea of what is
and if you can get that associated with the area where they are and the weather, and then we're talking. So let's go, BIP. Let's go get those data for everybody.
Right. So at this point, you can see, we're trying to get information about in what type of environment are your bees? How dense is your apiary, and then also the migration that you're doing, like if you're moving colonies. We're trying to get information about that. So those are the type of questions that we're asking after the row number of colony you have. That's the next focus of questions.
All right. So going next. Congratulations. Okay. Thank you.
So you just have finished the loss survey, which is the part that we use to be able to estimate loss rates. And so
loss rates. Okay.
Right. From here, you now have moved to the management section. And so this core management survey here is really a couple of yes, no answer, very high level, that just ask us in general, high level questions about all the type of management, right? Queens, treatment, nutrition, those high level questions.
Okay.
I'm going to open the survey on my screen because I can't read yours.
So if you can't, people at home cannot either. So
well, maybe then that's not a good exercise.
Let me see if I do this. Better?
Yeah, that's a little bit better, yeah. I don't know. People at home should tell.
Okay. So, here is interesting. So to see what people are. Oh, there is a question. Wait a second. Hello, Fabiana. Good to see you here. So Fabiana Homada, she asked, is there any relation between monitoring and treatment? So I think that's probably the part of the survey. So we're talking about treatment and the monitoring part.
And how often do they treat? So Fabiana, I'm not sure I understand your question. So is there a relationship between monitoring and treatment? So typically we recommend to beekeepers that they should do both monitoring and treatment, right? And you should always, monitor so that you know the disease level in your colonies, and use that information to decide if and when you need to treat. And then as we were saying a little earlier, you should always continue then monitoring after treatment to be able to say if the treatment was effective. So in that way, yes, there is a relation between the two, because the two are really needed to have an effective management of any pests, and in our case, mostly specifically Varroa. Now, when you ask, are you asking if we are asking those questions in the survey? Yes, we are. And then if you're asking how often do they treat, are you asking how often should we treat, or? I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but the answer to how often should you treat is actually, there is no like hard and set rules. I cannot give you a magic recipe that if you treat 3 times a year on those specific dates, you will be fine, because that is just not, how beekeeping works. You really need to be able to look inside your hive, determine the level, the pressure on your bees, and then follow the recommendations in your area. So talk to your local beekeeping group, talk to your local apiary inspectors, and know the recommendation in your area of when you should treat based on your level.
Yeah, I like the question. I just Fabiana, if you want to elaborate in your question, please. I will put it here, the continuation here.
So I don't know if you want to continue, Humberto, but I can just give you a lay of the land of the following steps. So I think the people have been able to see what the survey looks like.
Yeah.
So basically, there's those pages one after one and another. One thing that we should tell beekeepers is that if you cannot do it all in one sitting, you can close it up and reopen it again, and it will have saved your progress. So you can go back to it after a while and just continue where you left off.
From the same computer?
From the same computer.
Okay. Yes. So, yeah. Okay. I think that's important. From the same computer, you can stop and go back, which is always good.
Yes. And then other things, I do strongly recommend to look at the PDF in advance so that you know the type of question we're asking. But so as now Humberto is in the core management survey, we're asking questions about, how do you obtain new colonies? What type of queens did you use? Did you use mated queen or queen cells? Those are just general high level where you can select from a list. You don't have to give details. You don't have to give numbers. We just ask basically yes or no, which techniques did you use, right? And after that, we start to go into pest management, such as what are the products that you've used, so not just chemical treatment, but also sometimes physical and cultural practices. Some for example, root breaks or screen bottom boards. All of those you can also select from a list to tell us if you've done those practices in your operation. And then this table now that Humberto is looking at is the one where we ask just the frequency question, right? How often do you do each of those practices, such as inspecting your colonies or monitoring for Varroa? So you can tell us by months. If you do that, once per month, you can add just one in all of those cells. If you do it more regularly in the summer, you can add those. So that's getting to the frequency at which you perform those. And in terms of the core management practices, that is as much details as we're asking. And from the next page on, you will already be in the focused management survey, which focused on these environmental questions that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
And yeah, so we really tried and we made a lot of efforts to make the survey easier to take, and hopefully that shows. We do realize that there is still a lot of questions, and that is just because there's so many aspects that can impact the health of bees. So it's really important for us to try to get those different levels of details. There is just no way around it, right? We always have this struggle where some beekeepers tell us, oh, your survey is too long, but on the other hand, there are beekeepers that say, oh, but you haven't touched on this topic and that topic, right? So it's balance.
Yeah, it's a fine balance, depend of the mood of the person at the time, when they are maybe tired and just see a long list. So that's important. That's why it's important to have the ability to stop when you need, because you don't want to do this tired, or you want to complete this in the best way possible.
And just know we're so appreciative of your time. Like our IT team spends so much time on this survey to just make it easy to take, and that's really because we know, your time is precious, and we're so thankful that you take the time to share those data with us. So, thank you for your patience, I guess, and thank you for considering taking the survey.
Nathalie, Fabiana is back. So, if you record how often beekeepers treat, how often do they treat during the year, seasonal?
Okay.
Okay. Now
you're asking about past data. I got it. Now, So that is a great question. I don't have a visual to show you. I don't have a graph of that data prepared for this, but yes, we do know on average how many times beekeepers treat. And we actually have noticed that there is a lot of variation by regions and also by type of operation. And so typically we know, for example, commercial beekeepers tend to treat more often than backyard beekeepers. So just in sheer number of treatment application, we do see differences between operation types and regions. So I can't really give you a generality. As I was saying, for backyard beekeepers, the situation has really changed over the years, right? So if you look 10 years ago, the majority of backyard beekeepers did not use any treatment at all. So they wouldn't treat at all. And the couple of beekeepers that did treat at the time, they would just sometimes treat only one treatment a year. And most of the time, those tend to be calendar treatments, which is based on a calendar date rather than based on monitoring, which is, monitoring is what we recommend. So over the years, we've observed that, again, to shift. Now, a majority of backyard beekeepers are using treatment in their operation. I think the majority of backyard beekeepers, they still treat only once a year, sometimes two. But I don't want to say that you need to treat more, because that is not the recommendation, right? The recommendation is really, it should not be based on calendar year, or calendar date. It should be based on the number that you see in your hive.
All right. People have more questions for us, so let's see here. That's the time. Nathalie is here to answer all your questions. Let me see if I missed anything here. Looking. I don't know if this is a question, but Mike is always welcome here. Looking forward to hearing why both Manitoba and Pennsylvania, some commercial beekeepers had 60-80% dead outs. Is that confirmed? Do you have any? I don't know if that's true or not. Mike, where do you get that information from?
Is that something they've heard about this year?
Yeah, I don't know. So that's bad. I always feel bad when I see those numbers, like 60-80% is just, it's just too much.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. And sometimes, like, often we get journalists that come and ask us about those numbers, right? And,
yep.
and the things that is a common misconception that we hear in the press is that honeybees population is declining, and the population is declining. And so we're always there to tell the difference that the difference between the population size and the mortality rate, right? So the population in the US has actually been pretty stable in the last 20 years. We're about at 2.6 million colonies in the country, and that has its ups and downs from year to year, but it's relatively stable, and definitely has been stable for the last 20 years, despite the huge amount of turnover, right? And so those 60-80% dead out, those are catastrophical. Those are beekeepers that they have to rebuild their operation from the ground up, right? And again, every year we see a lot of beekeepers that are able to do that. And that really is saying a lot about the resilience of the beekeeping industry and their courage and their willingness to start over again and build up their numbers. And it's thanks to that the population has remained stable. So when I talk to the press, I usually say, no, the population is stable, but that doesn't mean that honeybees are out of the woods and healthy and everything is happy. Because we do have this high level of mortality, which is what the survey monitors, right? That tells us that there is an issue. It's not normal to lose those high level of colonies every year. And that's because there is so many stressors. And then, so this is important to show that even we have been monitoring this problem for 10 years and it's not getting better. It's not getting worse, but it's also, we see beekeepers improving their management practices, but the loss rates are still very high. So it's like beekeepers really are running to keep up with good practices and do what needs to be done, but we don't see the improvement in bee health, and that's probably because there are still other stressors that needs to be addressed, right? So diseases and pests are definitely high stressors, and those are high reasons why we're losing colonies. But there are other factors, right? Nutrition is an issue. The fact that we have lost a very high amount of the landscape and the natural landscapes in this country. And nutrition is becoming problematic, right? And so that's even a topic of sometimes competition between, the people that promote honeybees and promote native bees. And they're sometimes seen as at odds because they're like, oh, but they're competing for resources. And usually my answer, and I know that's a little simplistic, but it's, if we need more flowers, we shouldn't ask for less bees. We should plant more flowers. If they're competing for resources, we should provide them more habitat. And we've lost natural habitats left and right in this country for multiple reasons. And that is one other stressor that's affecting the bees. So, there is usually not a lot of mystery about why are our bees struggling. And it's complex, but it's not a mystery, right? There is diseases, there are nutrition issues, there is pesticide exposure, there is sometimes beekeeping mistakes, and all of that are stressors and causes of losing colonies. And we really need to address all of those topics to try to improve the situation.
Oh, a lot of things to consider. A lot of things. Yeah. All right, Nathalie, thank you very much for your time. It's a pleasure to have you here. I think everybody have a better understanding about how important all this data is. And I hope I can see you guys going to the website and put some of this data there so we can have a better graphics next year so we can discuss in other lives in the future. Nathalie, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing the word and helping me share the word about the survey. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Anytime. You know where to find me. All right. Thank you guys for coming, and I see you guys in the next video. Inside the Hive.tv, the show about bees. Bye-bye. All right, Nathalie, I think it's just us now.
Are you sure it still says live?
I don't know. If you guys can hear me, you can still